Amazing. Hi, I'm Camilla. I'm from Latina magazine. It's so nice to be here. How are you doing? First of all, are you exhausted? How have you been doing interviews all day?
It has been an all day thing, but it's been fun. I'm grateful. It's cool to talk about the film, and it's the first time hearing outside opinion, so it's cool. It's been a fun time. How are you though? How are you, Camila?
I'm good. I awkwardly signed on to this interview 3 hours earlier because I'm on New York time. Represent New York. I know you're a Bronx girl.
Yes,
Um,
yes, I am.
but yeah, I watched the movie last night. It was so good. I have to admit, I teared up at the end. Your character is the most badass, amazing person ever, and it was great. I mean, I feel like even though we're similar ages, I'm a few years older than you. I haven't seen like a high school kind of coming of age story in a long time, and this one was just really, really amazing. So I have so many questions to ask you and to go through.
Thank
Um,
you.
first things first. Love that you're a Bronx girl. Want to
Mhm.
hear about where you grew up. I mean, I think also like just to give you a little background about myself. Also Latina, grew up in Manhattan, Mexican parents, Mexican family, big family.
Yeah.
So I want to hear a little bit about your background. Obviously, I love seeing Latinas in film, especially more so now than I did growing up. So it was, incredible that, have you play that big role in this film. But I want to hear about your background, growing up in the Bronx, sort of that part of your life before we kind of dig into the movie stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a pretty interesting background. I'm really grateful. I'm from the Bronx, so a fellow New Yorker. Nice to see it. But my papi and my mother's parents immigrated from DR. So I am first generation on my father's side and second on my mother's, and that's immensely shaped me as a human being coming from an immigrant household. And I am from the Bronx, but I also spent a duration of time in Dallas, Texas, which was very interesting and definitely a fish out of water experience for me. And then I would spend all my summers in the Bronx. So I was navigating these two polar opposite worlds of living in Dallas, Texas for 8 years, um, which
Your family moved to Texas, or
my mom. So my mom
your
raised me as a single mother for half of my life.
okay.
And she wanted better for me just for the same reasons that my parents moved to New York, or my family came to New York. Um, my mom was pursuing a different area to raise me in, and she ended up in Dallas, Texas,
Amazing.
which was crazy. And still ask why exactly she chose Dallas, and she's like, I felt called there, so um, went to school there, and I still would come to the Bronx and spend all my summers with my abuela and my papi. Um, and then I moved back to New York when I was about 13.
Okay.
Yeah, and lived in Westchester, even though all my family was in the Bronx.
Got it.
So I've lived a lot of like
And
very
everywhere.
different, yeah, not that many places, but definitely very different environments.
Totally.
Um,
Well, I wanted to ask because I was wondering where you did high school. I want to talk about, what your high school experience was like and if it mirrors, obviously, the experience of your character in Moxie. So you did high school in Westchester?
yes, I did.
Tell me, tell me about that a little bit in terms of, obviously your Lucy is such a strong personality and she comes in and kind of immediately has this major presence at the school. What was your high school like, and how does it mirror, or how is it different from the one in Moxie? I love the smile that you're kind of giving me before we even go into this.
Because girl,
I'm so excited.
if you're from New York, if you
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. I was
Westchester's
only,
an
yeah.
yeah, Westchester is an interesting place.
Mhm.
Um, I remember moving there, and I vividly remember one of the very first things that someone told me when introducing themselves to me was Westchester is one of the richest counties in the country. And I was
Oh.
like, oh, one of these things is not like the other. And I was the one of
Mhm.
these things. Um, and I'm really grateful that my parents always made education a priority. And I was empowered by education and my academic achievements. It's always something that I've been in love with. So my parents wanted me to be in the best area to go to school, and didn't have the funds nor the resources to, do private tutoring or put me in a private school. So long story short, I was blessed with a phenomenal education because of the area that I went to, but it meant I was the only person of color in most of my classes. Um, one of the only Latinas and Black people in my entire school. I graduated in a class, my senior class was 300 and something people, and you could handpick the amount of Latino and Black people at our school. So there was an immense lack of diversity, and that resulted in me dealing with racism and oppression, microaggressions in very blatant ways, things that people would call me, the expectations that people had of me, and continuously feeling disregarded by my fellow peers and teachers. I went through my entire academic life and I never had a Black teacher. So those were just certain realities for me as a result of me going to affluent Caucasian schools my entire life, even though I was the antithesis of that. But I'm grateful for each experience because I think it encouraged me to really stay true to who I was and be outspoken and use my voice, even when it wasn't easy. It empowered me, even though that there were hurtful struggles and obstacles that I went through as a result of my identity and my race and my ethnicity and culture. It just made me more proud. And it also showed me firsthand the importance of seeing ourselves on screen and the importance of giving marginalized and disenfranchised communities voices, because art shapes society. So it's one of the reasons that I love what I do. It's my passion, but I think it's also imperative that we create stories of people who aren't quote unquote the norm.
Definitely. And I want to get to representation, and especially Latinx representation media and Afro Latinx representation media, because I think that's so important. But I wanted to touch on, the sense of you saying that it empowered you. And I, to some degree, I can relate in that I was the only Mexican girl in my entire school and would get asked the craziest things ever. And you look back on it and kind of you use that to build you up. Do you feel like you drew from that experience in developing Lucy as a character? I think there's a very, there's that scene in the beginning where she's like, I'm going to hold my head up high, which is obviously something that watching it now, I'm like, damn, I wish I really was like that in high school. Do you feel like you drew from your experiences in developing her? Or do you feel like you kind of had that confidence at that young age as well?
Mm. I think I definitely drew from my own personal life. It's a rarity to see like exact specificities of who you are in a character, and that was a blessing that I had. Um, Down to even some of the very clothes that I wore in the film are my own personal clothing. Like the boots that I wear throughout the entire film are boots I've had since my 8th grade year. So I personally and viscerally connected with Lucy, but it's ironic to me. My entire life, people have always told me that I was confident and outspoken, and mommy from like a very young age was like, "Adios mío, you're a rebel with a cause," even before I fully understood what that meant. Um, but it's ironic and comedic to me because in high school, I don't think I did enough. Even though I was outspoken, there were so many times that I suppressed my voice to want to assimilate and just survive and not have to argue in that classroom, and dealt with really ignorant comments and um, demeaning situations. And me trying to navigate that, there were moments that I wish I was more outspoken and more avid about staying truthful to who I am. But yeah, anyone that knows me, I think, would say that I've always been outspoken and rebellious. But I think Lucy really allowed me to further the voice and feel more empowered as a young woman, because I definitely was not on her level. I definitely was causing debates in class a lot. That's why I laughed when I first read this that scene in the classroom, because that was me in high school and for sure in college. But yeah, it was great. I personally connected with her, but she just allowed me to take my high school self even further and elevate sentiments I felt.
Totally. And I think that Lucy, I mean, I think she's going to be and you are going to be such an inspiration to younger girls watching. That was something that I was thinking for the entirety of the film, was how cool would it have been for me to be, I don't know, 16 years old and see these amazing girls taking charge and fighting against the system. So I think that I definitely think it'll serve as a role model. Do you feel like in preparation for your character, you drew upon certain mentors or people that you look up to, or like kind of feminist icons, in order to get ready for that role?
Absolutely. I said it earlier in the day. I'm really grateful that I have always yearned um, to be curious and learn about my own history, especially because I felt like it was kept from me. I didn't even have the term Afro Latina as a kid.
Yeah.
And I knew I wasn't white. And I knew that so many people within the Latino community um, othered me as a result of my complexion and my identity. So I always yearned to want to grow and delve into books and delve into history and literature. And I really let that drive me in portraying Lucy. I think our ancestors are such a large part of who we are, and we should be guided through their wisdom and their light, and want to do better and progress movements and learn from them. Uh, so specifically with Lucy, I felt even more empowered and inspired as an activist by people like, Angela Davis, Ashada Shakur, Nina Simone, Maya Angelou, Frida Kahlo, Mariana Rivero, like people that I looked up to my whole life, Celia Cruz, like unapologetic women that I, grasped onto as a younger girl and empowered me. So yeah, I definitely let that drive me in my activism and my personal life and portraying Lucy as well.
Definitely. I love that, unapologetic women. I mean, we those are all amazing names that you named, but there's definitely always room for more, and there's always room for more Latina and Afro Latina unapologetic women, for obviously there are people in our circles and our communities, but for the world to see,
Yeah.
and the world to admire. So I did want to talk about um, Afro Latina representation in media, and for you growing up, um, and who was it you saw on the screen? Did you feel represented? Now do you feel represented? What do you kind of want for younger Latina girls to get out of seeing you? I think that these are obviously all questions that we're grappling with now. I think that we can all agree that there needs to be more Latinas, there needs to be more Afro Latinas. But from your kind of personal experience, what was that like growing up for you, and who did you see and who did you not see?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Specifically, as a young girl, frankly, I didn't see myself. It hasn't been up until the last 2 years that I notably can remember anything that even mentioned Afro Latinidad. In my own personal life, I've literally met people that were like, what is that? Like, I've never met you, or someone who identifies as you, or Black people can speak Spanish, and it's my first tongue. And those can be really hurtful situations. But I've learned from them, and I've just allowed them to drive me in everything that I do. Specifically as a Latina now, I'm so grateful. I think that there is this renaissance happening within media and a lot of different spaces of us yearning for authenticity and specificity of voices that we weren't used to seeing. And I think that when I did see myself on screen, you never looked like me, candidly. And I dealt with that a lot auditioning. I would show up for Latina roles and they would be like, oh, that's not the role. And I'd be like, no, I'm auditioning for the Latina. And, I was told I wasn't Latina enough and wasn't this enough, XYZ enough. So I'm grateful to now see a change, but there's so much work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
There's still such a large disparity of um, not enough stories being centered around us, and not enough stories really looking at how dimensional our community is. And I'm so proud to be Latina, but I yearn for more growth, and I yearn for more accountability and people celebrating all the nuances of who we are and all the beautiful Latino countries, and becoming more familiar with that. And becoming more familiar with the fact that we can come in every shade and with every texture of hair and every eye color. So I hope with all of my work to really progress the needle and seeing change, because there's so much work yet to be done. But I am grateful for those very rare moments of Latin representation that I got to cling on to, whether it was Cheetah Girls when I was younger, whether it was West Side Story or In the Heights. You know, when I did see Latinos, I grappled onto that. But unfortunately, I rarely saw people that looked like me and people that were proudly to say that they were Latina and Black. You know, I felt most of the time people wanted me to choose. And I just thank God that I had parents and a family that instilled in me to be truthful to who I am and to be proud of every essence of who I am. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it is to be told you're not Latina enough in an audition. And it's, I think that something that I have spoken to with a lot of people that I interview or people that I work with or other Latinas is this kind of imposter syndrome that exists within the Latin community where like none of us, like, yeah, we, on the one hand, like we feel like we belong, but we also don't feel like we belong. And it's perpetuated within the Latin community. Like
Yeah.
it's, you know,
Ni
not
de aquí ni de allá.
ni de aquí ni de allá. Exactly.
Y también, like, ay, pero esa gringa. Ay, pero esa negra. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have this archetype in our minds of what Latinidad should look like and what the Latinx community should represent. And that is just so hurtful and has rampant implications on us progressing as a community and enjoying all the beauties of who we are. And unfortunately, I think that we have to be transparent and understand that the media has taken part in that. The media has perpetuated stereotypes of who we are. And for so long, only given us certain opportunities that were demeaning to our community and degrading. So I hope to continue to portray Latinas and individuals within the Latinx community that show different perspectives of who we are, you know, because we're not a monolith and we look different and we're all beautiful, no matter what shade or whether we can speak Spanish or not, or whether we can cook plátanos or not, which I can, mine are fire, but you know what I mean? Like all of that, so.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the kind of the message that we're trying to send out to the world is we are not a monolith. And
Yeah.
like here are voices in our, and you know, people from Mexico and people from the Dominican Republic and people from Colombia, and people from Argentina and people from El Salvador are all so different, but we're grouped under this big umbrella right now because, you know, largely because of the media. And so I think working to change that is a, you know, something that we should all embark on together. And I think that something I loved about MOXIE as well is hearing those small moments where your character speaks Spanish, perhaps maybe because, you know, obviously you're, you know, Lucy's such a big role the entire time, but it's not like they're like going into your house or showing your background, or it's these small moments where you're saying like, ya basta, ya nos hartamos.
Yeah.
I think at the end when you're chanting, like, I don't remember what it was exactly, but I remember the word like, ya nos hartamos. And
Yeah.
at least hearing that, and because the movie has so many different things going on, but then to get that kind of like Spanish part at the end, for me, I think maybe that's kind of like the moment where I started tearing up. And it's this kind of very like nuanced and subtle way of bringing through your identity. I don't know, was that something that you guys discussed beforehand, or the writers put in, or you put in, or how was that agreed upon?
Yeah, thank you. That is so kind of you to say. Funny enough, that was the part that my mom cried as well when she heard me speak Spanish in the film. Because most of it was just on the fly, like on set. And I thought it was just so beautiful because that is what we are. Like we live and we breathe our culture naturally. And for so long, like I just felt that Latinidad has been portrayed in the media under the white gaze. And, you know, we're kind of tap dancing for people and more of a commodity. And it's so unfortunate and frankly, a disservice and an injustice of portraying our culture in that way. So I naturally, as Alycia, talk Spanglish all the time, even to my, you know, friends who don't speak Spanish. So it was really powerful. And I'm so grateful to Amy, and I'm so grateful for her production company to really committing themselves to portraying these women in all of their beauty and wanting to portray each woman as a multidimensional young girl from a different background and different culture. So it was beautiful to have Amy all the time be like, throw it in, throw it in, throw it in. And I would just randomly say things and it ended up in the film. So I couldn't be more grateful. And I hope that Latinas can see that and never feel ashamed, because I know that there were moments that I felt ashamed to speak Spanish. And I know that, but now I'm able to acknowledge the beauty in hearing broken English and how that makes me feel home and not feel ashamed of that. Especially because if I didn't speak Spanish, I wouldn't be able to communicate with that in my family. So, I'm really grateful that Amy created that space. And specifically at the end of the film, fun fact, Amy just walked up to me right before we had done another take of that scene and was like, "Hey, do you want to do this in Spanish?" And I was like, ooh, sorry, that was my fault. And I was like, sure.
You're like, me.
Yeah, I was like, sure. It's an entire monologue in front of a couple hundred people. But you are Amy, and you asked me, shall receive, and she's just an angel and created that space for me to be able to do that. So it meant the world.
That's incredible. Tell me more about, a little bit more about working with Amy and what that was like. Obviously, I don't know if you knew her growing up. I mean, I've looked up to her for years. So what was that experience of kind of coming on a set with such an iconic woman?
Yeah. Yes, I definitely was familiar with Amy before becoming a part of this project, which just made the experience even sweeter. Like, there's so many reasons that I loved being on this film, but one of the greatest is being able to work with Amy. Like, she is such a force, and I had been familiar with her and been personally inspired by her as a result of watching her on SNL and being like this comedic woman who took up space, and next to these other great women like Tina Fey and Maya Rudolph, like I looked up to all of them. And then watching her in shows like, pardon me, The Community and Mean Girls, and watching her host, like she was just great. To then work with her and get to personally see her as a director, producer, actress, which she all did on this film, was wildly inspiring and empowering. Like, I left the film with so many lessons from her, and I just like also want to express how amazing of a human she is. Like, that is so much sweeter than the rest. Like, she is phenomenally talented and an icon because of her work, but she also just happens to be so sweet and like made every day such a joy, and was the best director that a girl could ever ask for. So it was a dream come true, to say the least.
Definitely a dream come true. She's, what a woman. I have so many memories of just going on YouTube with my friends and looking up all her SNL skits and watching them. So it's incredible to have been able to work with her. Did you know anyone else on the set before you came on? I know a lot of the people in the film obviously are around your age. Had you worked with any of them before? Or was it like a completely new, all new?
Yeah, everything was new. Everything. I didn't know anyone other than, Amy. But something really powerful that she did was, prior to us even stepping foot on set, she got Hadley, Lauren, phenomenal women, and now close personal friends, all together, and we just discussed the film and discussed the material and discussed what we wanted to convey. And there was so much power in that, because that was something she didn't need to do as a director. And we left there smiling and just feeling so humbled. And then that was continued throughout the film. She really cared about each person and wanted this to be a collective and a community, and it felt like a joy each day and an honor each day. But no, I wasn't familiar with anyone prior. So it's funny now looking back that they're like some of the most important people in my life. And I currently live with Josie Toda. She's the room right above me. So yeah.
Because you were, do you see this kind of as your first major film? I know you've been in Saved by the Bell, and these last few years have been kind of a whirlwind of big kind of new gigs for you. But how do you see this in terms of your career development, and what you want to do next? Do you want to continue in films? Are you liking the television more?
Yeah, absolutely. This is like what I consider to be like my first thing of, notoriety, and allow me to have more exposure as an actress. I've been in the industry since I was 3. I've always been in love with the arts. But this was, yeah, the first opportunity that I had to step into a role of this magnitude. And I was just so grateful. Like, most people don't know, but when I started filming this film, I still had plans of going back to school for my second semester. And I was enrolled into 2 online classes while filming this, which, to say the least, those grades were the worst grades I ever received during a semester, but it was because I was filming this phenomenal Netflix film. But yeah, so most people don't know that I fully had a job to go back to. I was planning to, after I filmed MOXIE and had finished the project, to go back to New York and further my education and finish my degree, and had an RA job. And yeah, I didn't permanently live in LA. So MOXIE changed my life in so many ways. And then literally the very last day of shooting this film, I got the call, and Josie and I on the same day found out that we would be filming Saved by the Bell together.
That is so exciting. And so how many semesters, so did you do a semester of college, or you just started and
I did 2 years.
2 years. So you basically did it all. You mean all you really did is 2 years, to be honest.
Thanks. That makes me feel better, because I definitely want to finish my degree one day. I was really grateful to find a field that I felt personally connected with. Political science was what I was studying. I was a double major, political science and PR. You know, very different from acting, not the same ballpark, but I loved it. So yeah, I did 2 years, and I did the whole college thing. Crazy dorms. I was an RA for a semester, had 3 jobs at one point in the midst of honors classes.
New York?
Yes, I went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Amazing. Okay, close by.
Yeah, and then I told myself I was going to take a break and give acting 110% for the first time in my life, because acting was always like one of my first love in life, but education came first. So yeah, my first semester junior year was going to be my break to fully 100% get to acting, and I would take some online classes while working. And 3 weeks into my break in LA, I booked MOXIE.
Here we are. I also just love that, because I would want to think to myself that when Lucy goes to college, she's a poli-sci major, you know. You gotta love, I almost did poli-sci, but then I couldn't pass stats, but that's another conversation.
We could talk about that another day, girl. Yeah.
We can talk about that another day. So I two more things that I want to touch on. I think one is there are obviously so many young creatives now that with COVID, they're I think some of their dreams have been interrupted. I think a lot of them are, don't have the same access to auditions or even putting films together with their friends that they might have. What advice do you have, to those young creatives, particularly to young Latinas who are probably dealing with this, obviously the struggles of COVID and interrupting their acting careers? What would you want to tell them?
Yeah. I would tell young people specifically to keep feeding your passion, and to honor the distinct journey that you are on. I think comparison is a stealer of joy. And I think that each person has their own unique individual voice, and you're doing the world a disservice by not staying true to that and by following your own journey and light. So I would tell people, specifically during COVID, which is just heartbreaking, what's going on in this pandemic. And I'm always praying for the world and just healing during such a turbulent time in the world. And I understand how easy it is to feel isolated right now, specifically if you are an artist and you yearn to create. I would say, to feed that light however you can, whether it's reading and staying engaged with certain film and studying that film, and, reading plays, and just pushing yourself to grow as an artist within your 4 walls. And I know that that's hard, but I would say continuous growth is one of the most important aspects of being an artist and just being an individual in general. And specifically Latinas, I would say to stay true to who you are, and to also know that when you're in rooms, you're supposed to be there. I think for so long I questioned my own worth, as most women do, and specifically Latinas, because we don't see ourselves. And, we deal with being, stereotyped and fetishized and XYZ. So specifically to Latinas, to, stay true to your voice and know that you are worthy, and to have the power within yourself, gain power from your ancestors, and to go after what you want vigorously. Yeah, I take a lot of power by reaching into my history and learning from Latina and Black women from the past, and having that guide me as well. And familia, like that's my everything. Familia, familia, familia.
Familia, familia, familia. And, I literally got chills when you mentioned you belong in that room. I think that's so important to young women, obviously, but especially to Latina and Black women. You belong in that room.
Absolutely.
The last thing that I wanted to do is do a little slang swap, teach you some Mexican slang, hopefully get some Dominican slang out of it.
Love that.
Because right now, I mean, I just joined Latina, but I'm using this as an opportunity to get all the slang I can get. So why don't I'll give you one in one Mexican, and then you give me one Dominican, okay? Okay, so the most common Mexican one is "qué onda, güey?" When you're saying, so when you're saying like, instead of like "qué pasa" or "qué tal," you say "qué onda, güey?" So güey.
¿Qué onda, güey?
Sí, ¿qué onda, güey?
¿Qué onda, güey?
¿Qué onda, güey? Ajá.
¿Qué
Sí.
onda? That's cute. ¿Qué onda,
güey? ¿Qué onda, güey? Ajá, exactamente. So güey is like dude in
yeah.
So you always hear Mexican saying ¿qué onda, güey?
¿Qué onda, güey? Now I'm gonna start using it, especially because I live in LA now.
You gotta start using it. They'll love it.
¿Qué onda, güey? I like that.
There you go. Okay,
Thank you. Well, I feel like there's a lot of Dominican slang, but our equivalent to that, which nobody else is que lo que, which is like what's up.
Yeah,
que lo que. Yeah.
I forgot about that one. Que lo que.
Yeah. It's like what's good. And like everybody says it. Like que lo que, like no matter what generation you're from, it's our like what's up. Yeah.
Got it. So next time we see each other, I'm gonna be like, you're gonna be like, que onda, güey? And I'm gonna be like, que lo que.
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna be like, pero qué onda, güey? Órale. Like that's, yes.
There we go. Okay, one more before they scoot me out of here.
No, I love it.
In Spanish, in order to say like so cool, like that's cool, you say like que chido.
Oh, que chido.
Que chido is like the form of saying cool. I'm wondering if there's an equivalent or you say que chido, or you say que padre.
Oh, que padre, que chido. I love that I'm learning right now. Like, I've not heard of these phrases, no words.
Like if you want to say, like, that's cool, like, what would you say?
I feel like there's probably a lot that can come to mind, but what I think is funny is that this is a very common Dominican phrase, even though it's an English word. Está heavy.
Está heavy.
Está heavy. Eso está, pero muchacho, eso está heavy.
Eso está heavy.
Like, you know what I mean? It's an English word.
Yeah.
But I promise you, if you ask like some Dominicans, they're gonna be like, no, that's Spanish.
And you have that, and like it's the exact same thing that we were saying, like the Spanglish mix. It's part of all culture. So okay, que lo que está heavy. I'm gonna use those, and I really do, Alycia, hope that we meet again soon at some point, or get to talk at a later date. After you have some more of your, I'm sure, big movie roles and TV roles that will come from this, because it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I think it's going to be so nice for all of our fans at Latina to hear this, and I think it'll be inspirational for them. And so I'm very grateful for this time, and I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you. Looking forward to hopefully meeting you in person when things are safer. It was so much fun, and I was grateful to learn about you. And also, I love Latina, by the way, so this is an honor.
Thank you. All right. Okay. So good luck with everything. And I will, I guess, leave this chat now.
Yes. Gracias, amor. Have a good night.
Bye.